AITA for confronting my dad after realizing my uncle is actually my real father? I grew up believing my family was the definition of normal, maybe not perfect, but solid, dependable, loving. My dad was the quiet, steady type. My mom was nurturing but always a little anxious. And my Uncle Mark, well, he was practically family. He was always there. Birthdays, Christmas dinners, Sunday barbecues. Mark was like a shadow presence that never really left. My dad used to joke, "Mark's more like my brother than my friend." I thought it was just a figure of speech. I didn't realize it was a confession hiding in plain sight. For most of my childhood, I adored Uncle Mark. He was fun, outgoing, always brought gifts, and had this easy warmth that made me feel special. But my dad, he was the one who showed up for everything that mattered. My school plays, my first driving lesson, my graduation. He was my hero. I never questioned that. Everything changed last year, when my mom got sick. It started as something small, fatigue, dizziness, but soon turned into endless hospital visits and test results that never came back good. I was 27, and watching her fade was the hardest thing I'd ever done. One night, when I was sitting beside her hospital bed, she looked at me with tears pooling in her eyes. She said, "Sweetheart, there's something I have to tell you before it's too late." I remember smiling nervously and saying, "Mom, don't talk like that." But she shook her head. "You need to know the truth." Her voice was trembling, and for a second I thought she was going to confess something about her illness or her will, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. She whispered, "Your father isn't your real dad." I froze. "What?" She looked away. "It's Mark. Your Uncle Mark." At first, I laughed. Like an awkward, disbelieving laugh. "Mom, you're on medication. You don't know what you're saying." But her face stayed deadly serious. Her hands trembled as she said, "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It happened once, and I got pregnant. Your dad knew from the beginning. He wanted to raise you as his own, for the sake of our marriage, for the sake of you." The world started spinning. I remember hearing the monitor beeping beside her bed and realizing my whole life, every birthday, every "I love you, Dad," every photo on the wall, was built on a lie. I wanted to scream, to demand why she'd kept this from me for 27 years. But she started crying, saying, "I couldn't destroy our family. He forgave me, and we decided to move on. You were our daughter. All that mattered was that you were loved." Loved? How could love exist in so much deception? After that, I didn't know how to function. I went home, looked at old pictures, and saw things I'd never noticed before. The way my dad sometimes stared at Mark when he thought no one was looking. The way Mom's smile always looked strained in family photos. I pulled out my baby album and saw a picture of Mark holding me at my christening. He looked proud. Too proud. And suddenly, I realized I had his eyes. I didn't confront anyone right away. I kept it bottled up, but it started eating me alive. My dad, the man who raised me, was walking around like nothing was wrong. Mark would still text me occasionally, asking how Mom was doing, sending "love you, kiddo" messages that made my skin crawl. Then Mom passed away. At the funeral, Mark stood beside my dad, comforting him. Watching them together, the two men who had built their lives on this secret, I felt something inside me snap. When Mark came over to hug me, whispering, "She loved you more than anything," I blurted out, "You mean our mom?" Everything froze. My dad turned pale. Mark's hands fell from my shoulders. My aunt gasped audibly. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. My dad's voice cracked as he said, "What did you just say?" And I, shaking, crying, shouted, "I know. Mom told me before she died. I know who my real father is." The silence that followed was unbearable. Mark's eyes filled with tears, and my dad just stood there, staring at the floor. Finally, he said quietly, "You weren't supposed to find out." I lost it. Not supposed to find out? You lied to me my entire life. You both did. My dad stepped closer, trying to explain. "I did what I thought was right. You were my daughter. You still are." But I screamed back. "You knew she cheated on you. You knew she got pregnant with someone else's child, and you just pretended." He broke down. Tears streamed down his face as he said, "Because I loved you. Because you were mine in every way that mattered. You think I didn't die a little every time I looked at her and remembered? You think I didn't hate myself for staying? But I did it for you." I didn't know how to respond. There was too much pain in that room. Too much history. Too much betrayal. Mark tried to speak, saying, "I never wanted to hurt anyone." But I snapped. "Then why were you always around? Why couldn't you stay away?" He said, "Because I wanted to be close to you, even if I couldn't be your father." That broke me. Every moment of my childhood now felt tainted. Every joke, every hug, every visit. I ran out of the house and didn't come back for days. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart. Mark stopped calling. My dad and I barely spoke. When we did, it was strained, polite small talk that tried to pretend we weren't both broken. He told me once, quietly, "You don't have to forgive me. Just remember I loved you first." And that was the thing I knew he did. That's what made it so much harder. He wasn't the villain. Neither was Mom. Maybe not even Mark. They were just human. Flawed, scared, trying to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. But love built on lies has an expiration date, and ours finally came due. Now, a year later, I still don't know how to feel. I haven't spoken to Mark since the funeral. My dad and I are trying, but there's a distance that never existed before. Sometimes he calls just to ask if I'm eating, and I hear the guilt in his voice. And sometimes I catch myself missing him the way I used to, the way I did before I knew. People say truth sets you free, but it doesn't. Not always. Sometimes it just burns everything to the ground and leaves you standing in the ashes, wondering what was real in the first place. So tell me, was I wrong for confronting him? Should I have let the lie die with my mom? Or was I right to finally demand the truth, even if it destro? Yet us all? So tell me, AITA for confronting my dad after realizing my uncle is actually my real father?